Hello fellow artists, my name is Luisa and this is the Lulu Blue Studio. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to paint these flowers. It's going to be an easy tutorial for beginners where we are going to play a little bit with wet on wet and wet on dry technique. Are you ready? Let's start together. First thing I do is to take my flat brush and I decide which colors I want to use, and in my case I mixed a little bit of transparent orange with a little bit of yellow ochre. And I use this flat brush because I can create these easy petals just by using the side and the belly of this brush. Mainly I'm creating a watery mixture of orange and I'm keeping the center of this flower empty. I will add the colors of the center in a second moment. And for now I'm creating these easy 4-petal flowers. This is, in my opinion, the easiest flower you can create. This shape is of a, let's say, generic flower. And at this point I'm just adding a little bit of Scarlet Red into the orange of the first layer. In this way, we play a little bit with the technique of the wet in wet. This means that I am adding onto the first wet layer of paint some wet red, and I'm allowing these two colors, orange and red, to blend together. I proceed by using always the same brush and adopting the same technique to keep creating other flowers in the center of this page. So basically the approach I'm using is to create first the main flowers, the hero flowers of this composition, and I started by this orange flower in the center, and I've created one yellow flower under the orange flower, and I'm going to create a red flower above the orange flower. In this phase of this painting, I'm just trying to lay onto the page a little bit of paint, and I'm trying to create these basic shapes of these flowers. I am trying to give to this painting a little bit of movement and flow by adding and creating these flowers on a, let's say, line that goes from the bottom left corner of this page up to the right corner of the upper part of this page. But then I don't want these flowers to be too straight on a line, therefore I add a few flowers in Quinacridone Magenta. We are keeping everything extremely simple, and this means that all of the flowers for now are created using this flat brush and using different concentrations of colors that we have on our color palette, and leaving the center of these flowers empty. We're going to add the center of these flowers in a second moment. For now, we just take care to choose which colors we want our flowers to be painted, and also we take care to add through the wet on wet technique some additional brush strokes in different colors while the first layer of the paint is still wet. These are some of the basics of watercolor painting, and these are some of the most important techniques that you should practice while you are learning how to paint flowers. I have written an 18-page ebook, the name is The Beginner's Guide to Watercolor Flower Painting, where I describe these techniques, and I encourage you to download for free by clicking on the link in the description down below. When you are painting these flowers, you can just use always the same brush and take advantage of creating flowers always in the same shape. Just try to create flowers that in some cases showcase all of their petals, and other flowers that instead are sort of hidden behind the main flowers. In this way you will create a little bit of movement and you will create a sort of composition that is a little bit nicer, let's say, to look at. I take at this point my round brush in size 6. This is a round brush from Princeton, and I like it because although it's quite soft, it is also quite easy to use for these details where you need a little bit of precision. And in this case, I am creating the stems of these flowers, and I want these brush strokes to be well defined. Therefore, I use this round brush in size 6. And I'm giving to these brush strokes a sort of shape, a sort of curved shape, and they sort of connect the bottom part of the page to the upper part of the page. I am mixing mainly some Sap Green and Azomethine Green Yellow, and I'm taking care to connect also these flowers in the upper left part of the composition. Then I take a thicker round brush in size 6 and I mix a little bit of Sap Green with a little bit of Quinacridone Magenta to create a sort of green that is a little bit more muted, and I start to create the leaves on this flower composition. To create these leaves, I am mainly taking advantage of the shape of this round brush, and I'm adding some pressure and releasing the pressure, starting from the tip down to the belly of this brush and then releasing the pressure. I keep in mind to remove part of the pigment in my cup of water to create different color values of this green all around this flower composition. And also, to keep giving to this flower composition some movement, I am adding more or less in the center of this composition a longer branch of these leaves, where some of them are just, let's say, falling down to the right part of this composition. While the first layer of the paint is still wet, I'm adding some more concentrated Sap Green in order to give to some of these leaves a brighter and lighter sort of color. I love adding these brush strokes while the first layer is still wet, because this is a sort of moment where I cannot control how the paint is going to blend, and usually the results are super beautiful, and this is the reason why I love so much watercolor painting. I suggest you to keep in mind to keep changing the colors that you're using to create your leaves and also the color values. And this means that for some brush strokes, you just need to remember to remove a part of the pigment in the cup of water in order to create brush strokes that are less concentrated in color. And at this point, to balance this whole composition, I'm creating similar leaves also in the center left part of this composition. Remember to create some leaves that are bigger in size and other leaves that are much smaller in size. This will give to your composition a lot more movement. If you like this video and if you're painting along with me, please let me know in the comments below. I really love reading your comments, and I also take inspiration from your comments for what to paint next. So really let me know what you think, what are you struggling with if you want, and I can create some content that is going to be useful for you. Thank you very much for your support. And at this point, with this round brush, I keep defining the overall shape of this whole composition, and then with a round brush in size 6, the same that I used to create the stems of this composition, I mix a little bit of Mars Black and Burnt Umber to create the center of these flowers. If the petals are still wet, when you're going to touch with the tip of your brush the center of the flowers, you will notice some beautiful blending effect of the different colors. I picked for this reason some dark paint, a mixture of burnt umber and Mars Black, to blend into the bright red and orange of the flowers that I've created for the first layer. But of course you can also pick other color mixtures and you can create the center of your flowers in any color you prefer. Also, if you don't want your center to blend into the petals, you just wait for the petals to be completely dry. And at this point we have created the whole first layer for the main flowers and for the leaves. At this point we can add a few details, and this is what I'm going to do through the technique wet on dry. It means that after I have created the first layer and this has dried completely, we can take a smaller brush to start to add details. So this is what I am doing with a round brush from Silver Black Velvet, and in particular I'm using the tip of this brush to create some fine brush strokes and the belly of this brush to create some brush strokes that are much thicker. With this technique, I'm trying to define the shape of these petals, and I'm keeping everything super simple. So I mix with this brush a similar color mixture to the base of these flowers, and I try to highlight the petals through fine brush strokes. And as I proceed, I decide whether to add some brush strokes that are in even different colors from what I have created the first layer on. And with this I mean that, for example, on yellow flowers I can add some red brush strokes, or on orange flowers I can add some brush strokes in yellow ochre. This is up to you, and this is the moment where you can have the most fun, and I encourage you to try and even mix different colors from the color of the base of your flowers. Remember that you can add as many or as little details as you prefer, depending on the effect that you want to achieve. In this case, for this watercolor flower composition, I've decided to add brush strokes through the wet on dry technique, both on flowers and then on leaves too. To add the brush strokes on the leaves, I mixed a little bit of Sap Green with a little bit of Quinacridone Magenta and also with a little bit of Quinacridone Purple, in order to create a darker and duller sort of green. With this color mixture then, I started to add a few brush strokes onto the leaves, and as you can see, these brush strokes either define the shape of the leaves or sort of create some veins into the leaves. I encourage you to try to create these brush strokes and keep everything quite loose and free, so don't think too much where to add these brush strokes. Just think about changing how much your pressure onto the paper through the brush is going to be, and just keep in mind to have these sort of veins into the leaves, but don't think too much about where these brush strokes need to be placed or which color exactly this needs to be. Just have fun, and this is a great exercise to let yourself go and even explore new techniques. And at this point, I take back my round brush in size 6. This is a round brush, as I said in first place, a little bit more stiff compared to the round brush I used to create the layers. And with this round brush, I just go back to the center of some flowers and I add a few brush strokes in Cobalt Violet. This allows me to create some center of the flowers in a much brighter color, because with the first layer, the color that I added has dried and I saw that it was a little bit too plain compared to the whole composition. And so then I take back my round brush from Silver Black Velvet and I start adding details where I feel these flowers need a little bit more character. I use this brush in size 6 from Silver Black Velvet to create these layers, because I really feel this is the softest brush that I have that allows me to create the loosest type of brush strokes for these flowers. And so this is the brush that I'm using. As I said in first place, I usually mix very similar colors to the base of these flowers to create these layers, but you can also try to use completely different colors. And at this point the composition is almost ready, but I have decided to give and to add a little bit more brightness by adding some sort of yellow filling flowers that follow a little bit the flow of the leaves I've created. Compared to the leaves and to the main flowers that I've created in this flower composition, these filling flowers will not have any detail and are really there to brighten up a little bit this composition. I'm using the round brush in size 6 from Princeton because being a little bit stiffer as a brush, I can create a little bit more details onto these yellow flowers. But then I switched back to my round brush in size 6 from Silver Black Velvet to create the stems of these flowers, of these yellow flowers, because this brush has such a fine tip that I can create some lines that are so fine that no other brush can allow me to reach this result. And with this, we have reached the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this tutorial. Thank you. See you in my next video.